The expensive fountain pen felt foreign between my trembling fingers. Heavy, cold, like it knew the weight of what I was about to do. The mahogany conference table stretched between us like an ocean, polished to such a shine I could see the distorted reflection of my face. Pale, hollow-cheeked, with dark circles under my eyes that even my carefully applied makeup couldn't hide. Across from me, Dominic sat motionless. Only the slight rise and fall of his broad shoulders beneath his impeccably tailored charcoal suit betrayed that he was breathing at all. His dark hair, usually so perfectly styled, had a single strand falling over his forehead. Even in this moment, I had to fight the urge to reach across and brush it back into place. Old habits. Mrs. Russo. The lawyer's voice sliced through my thoughts. Not Elena. Not even Ms. Petrov, my maiden name that I would soon reclaim. Mrs. Russo, a title I'd worn like a crown and a collar for 5 years. If you could sign here, please. The scratch of Dominic's pen against paper echoed in the cavernous room, as he signed his name with the same confidence he did everything else. No hesitation, no regret. He slid the document toward his lawyer without looking at me once. 3 armed men stood silently along the walls, Dominic's security detail. Everyone in the room pretended they were normal accessories for a divorce proceeding. I knew better. I'd learned what those bulges under designer jackets meant during my years as Dominic's wife. When I'd met Dominic 5 years ago, I was just a waitress at La Stella, a high-end restaurant downtown. He came in every Thursday, always requesting my section, always leaving tips that exceeded my weekly pay. I thought he was just another wealthy businessman. Mysterious, yes. Dangerous, perhaps, in the way all-powerful men carried an edge of danger. But I had no idea what dangerous truly meant until I was already wearing his ring. Elena. My name and his voice still sent electricity down my spine, even now, even here. It was the first word he'd spoken directly to me in months. Your turn. The leather chair creaked as I leaned forward. The pen wobbled between my fingers, hovering above the signature line. The familiar scent of his cologne, sandalwood and something uniquely him, drifted across the table, flooding me with memories I'd fought so hard to suppress. Our wedding day. His hands, always so steady, trembling slightly as he slid the ring onto my finger. The first time I saw him truly angry, when one of his men disrespected me, the cold, terrifying calm before violence erupted. The night I discovered what his business empire truly entailed, hidden in a locked room in our mansion. The morning I found the bloodstain on his shirt that he couldn't explain away. The first time I tried to leave. The way the doors suddenly locked themselves. The way my passport disappeared. The way he looked at me. Not with anger, but with something worse. A possessive determination that said, "What's mine stays mine." "Is there a problem?" his lawyer asked, his voice dripping with impatience. I looked up, first at the lawyer, then at Dominic. For the first time that day, his eyes met mine, dark, impenetrable, like looking into the depths of the ocean at midnight. There was something there, a flicker of the man I'd fallen for before I knew what he was, before I became a prisoner in a golden cage. My chest tightened, heart hammering against my ribs so violently I was certain everyone could hear it. The words rose up my throat, dangerous and unstoppable, before I could swallow them back. "There's something you should know first." The room went still. Even the bodyguards shifted their weight almost imperceptibly. Dominic's jaw tightened. "We can discuss property arrangements after the signing. My offer is already more than generous." The lawyer nodded, eager to conclude our business. "Mrs. Russo will receive the apartment in Manhattan, the summer house in the Hamptons, and the agreed-upon settlement of... I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air, solid as the walls around us. The lawyer's mouth snapped shut. One of the bodyguards coughed into his fist. Dominic didn't move, not a muscle, not a flicker of his eyelids, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. "Leave us," he said, his voice quiet yet slicing through the silence like a blade. The lawyer began to protest. "Mr. Russo, I don't think..." Now. Still quiet. Still deadly. The shuffle of expensive shoes against marble floors, the click of the heavy door closing. And then it was just us, Me on one side of the mahogany ocean, him on the other, the divorce papers between us like a battlefield. "You're lying." His voice was controlled, but I knew him well enough to hear the dangerous undercurrent. I reached into my purse, my hands still trembling, and pulled out the 3 positive pregnancy tests I'd taken, along with the doctor's confirmation from yesterday. I slid them across the table, watching as his eyes dropped to them, narrowed, calculating. "It's yours," I said, answering his unspoken question. "There's been no one else. There couldn't be. Not with the constant surveillance. Not with the drivers who reported my every movement. Not with the staff who watched and whispered and kept him informed of my comings and goings." He stood suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. I flinched at the sound. He noticed. He always noticed every reaction, cataloging weaknesses like ammunition, but for once, he didn't use it against me. Instead, he paced to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, his back to me, hands clasped behind him, the perfect silhouette of power. 3 months, I said to his back. "I didn't know until a few weeks ago. I wasn't sure what to do." He turned, his expression unreadable. "And what exactly do you want, Elena?" The question carried layers of meaning. What did I want from him? Money, security, a family, freedom? "I don't know," I admitted. "But I thought you deserved to know before we made this final." He moved with the silent grace of a predator, circling the table until he stood beside me. I remained seated, fighting every instinct to shrink away. He reached down, one finger tracing the line of my jaw, so gently it could almost be mistaken for tenderness if I didn't know better. "My child," he said, the words somewhere between a statement and a question. "My blood." I nodded, unable to speak past the knot in my throat. "And you thought I would just sign this," he gestured dismissively toward the divorce papers, "and let you walk away with my heir?" "It's my baby too," I whispered. His laugh was short and without humor. Elena. He said my name like a prayer and a condemnation. "When will you understand? What's mine stays mine." The familiar words sent ice through my veins. He bent down, his lips brushing my ear as he spoke. "You were never going to be free of me. This—" His hand hovered over my still flat stomach, not quite touching. "Just makes it official." He straightened, adjusting his cuffs with meticulous precision, the gesture so normal it was jarring in the context of the moment. He pressed a button on his phone, and instantly the door opened, his head of security stepping in. "Marco, Mrs. Russo isn't feeling well. She'll be returning to the estate. Ensure the guest house is prepared for her comfort." His eyes never left mine as he issued the command. "The divorce," I began, "is no longer on the table." He picked up the papers and tore them in half with deliberate slowness, the sound deafening in the quiet room. "We have much to discuss, but not here. Go with Marco. Rest. We'll talk tonight." It wasn't a request. With Dominic, nothing ever was. Marco stepped forward, his expression sympathetic but firm. I'd always liked Marco, as much as one could like their jailer. He at least had been kind during my darkest moments in the Russo household. I stood on unsteady legs, gathering my purse, my dignity. "This changes nothing," I said, finding a fragment of courage. "I still want out." Dominic's smile was slow, confident, terrifying in its certainty. "No, my love. This changes everything." He gestured to my stomach. "That is a Russo. And Russos stay together, always." As Marco led me toward the door, Dominic called out one last time. "Elena." I paused, not turning. "Don't make the mistake of thinking you can run. Not now. Not ever again." The threat hung in the air, wrapping around me like chains. I had thought, foolishly, desperately, that I was walking toward freedom today. Instead, I had sealed my fate with 2 words. I was carrying the one thing Dominic Russo valued above all else, legacy, and I knew with bone-deep certainty that he would burn the world to the ground before letting his child, or the woman carrying it, slip from his grasp. As the elevator doors closed, separating me from his penetrating gaze, I pressed my hand to my stomach. What had I done? What would become of this innocent life, born into Dominic's dark world? And what would become of me, now that I'd given him the ultimate reason to never let me go? The drive back to the estate passed in a blur of city streets, melting into suburban landscapes, and finally into the exclusive enclave where Dominic's mansion stood like a fortress. Tall wrought-iron gates swung open as our car approached, security cameras tracking our movement with mechanical precision. The sprawling grounds, meticulously maintained gardens, marble fountains, and hidden security measures had once impressed me. Now they represented the boundaries of my gilded prison. Marco drove in silence, occasionally glancing at me in the rearview mirror with an expression I couldn't quite decipher: concern, pity. Or was he just making sure I didn't try anything foolish? "He'll calm down," Marco finally said as we approached the circular driveway. "Give him time," I almost laughed. In the 5 years I'd known Dominic Russo, calm had never been his natural state. Controlled, calculated, coldly furious, yes. But calm? That was just the surface. The mask he showed the world while rage or determination or obsession boiled beneath. The car stopped in front of the guest house, a small 3-bedroom residence separate from the main mansion, where I'd been living for the past 2 months since I'd asked for the divorce. My first attempt at creating distance, at breathing air untainted by his presence. "Rosa left some food for you," Marco said, opening my door. "And the doctor will be here at 6. I froze halfway out of the car. "Doctor?" "I don't need a doctor. I just saw one yesterday." Marco's expression remained neutral. "Mr. Russo's orders. Just a checkup. Just a checkup. Just a confirmation." Just Dominic asserting control, making sure I wasn't lying, ensuring his property, both me and the child I carried, was in perfect condition. "Tell him I'm not a broodmare to be examined at his convenience," I said, the words sharper than I intended. A flash of sympathy crossed Marco's weathered face. "Elena," he said, dropping formalities for once. "Choose your battles wisely." It was the closest he'd ever come to giving me personal advice. The warning in his tone made my retort die in my throat. Marco had worked for Dominic for 15 years. He'd seen what happened to those who defied him. The guest house felt different somehow as I entered, as if the space itself knew its temporary nature was now revoked. My suitcases, packed that morning in preparation for my new life, stood by the door like abandoned dreams. I kicked off my heels, feeling the cool marble floor beneath my stockinged feet. The quiet was deafening after the tension of the conference room. I moved through the living room to the bathroom, avoiding my reflection in the mirror as I splashed cold water on my face. When I finally looked up, mascara tracks ran down my cheeks, my carefully applied makeup dissolving under the weight of unshed tears. "Don't," I told my reflection. "Don't you dare break now." A knock at the door startled me. Had Dominic come already? My heart raced as I hastily dried my face and smoothed my hair. But it was Rosa, Dominic's housekeeper, a kind-faced woman in her 60s who had been with the Russo family since Dominic was a boy. "I brought you some tea, mija," she said, her accent thicker when she used terms of endearment. She'd called me that from my first day as a new bride, terrified and trying to hide it. "Ginger tea. Good for the baby." So everyone knew already. Of course they did. In Dominic's world, information was currency, and news traveled fast. "Gracias, Rosa." I accepted the delicate china cup, the warmth seeping into my cold fingers. Rosa hesitated at the doorway, concern etched in the lines around her eyes. "He was different before," she said suddenly. "Before his father died, before he had to become what he is." I'd heard fragments of this before, whispered references to Dominic's father, Antonio Russo, a man whose brutality was legendary even among criminals. A man who had beaten his only son mercilessly, teaching him that power was everything, and weakness was death. "That doesn't excuse what he's become," I said quietly. Rosa crossed herself. "No, it doesn't." Her dark eyes held mine. "But it might help you understand, and understanding is a weapon, mija." She left before I could respond, closing the door softly behind her. I sipped the tea, letting the spicy warmth of ginger soothe my churning stomach as I considered her words. Understanding Dominic as a weapon. I'd tried that approach before, early in our marriage, when I still believed I could heal the darkness in him with enough love, enough patience. Before I realized some wounds ran too deep, twisted too fundamentally into a person's being to ever be truly healed. The rest of the afternoon dragged on, the clock ticking away the moments until Dominic would arrive. I showered, washing away the stress of the day, and changed into a simple dress, neither too formal nor too casual, armor of a different kind. The doctor came and went, an older woman with kind eyes but clinical hands, who asked no questions beyond those pertaining to my health and the pregnancy. She took blood samples, checked my vitals, performed an ultrasound. The rapid flutter of my baby's heartbeat filled the room, and despite everything, tears pricked my eyes. This was real. This was happening. "Everything looks perfect," she said, handing me printouts of the ultrasound. "Approximately 12 weeks and 4 days. Due date around February 20th. Valentine's season. The irony wasn't lost on me. After she left, I sat in the garden behind the guest house, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of fire. The security detail remained discreetly visible at the perimeter, a reminder that while the chains might be invisible, they were still very much present. The sound of tires on gravel announced his arrival just after 8. The heavy tread of his footsteps on the path made my pulse quicken, my body's traitorous response to his proximity, even after everything. He appeared at the edge of the garden, his suit exchanged for dark jeans and a charcoal button-down, sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms. More casual, but no less intimidating. He carried a manila folder in one hand. "The doctor says you're both healthy," he said without preamble. "Did you think I was lying about that too?" His expression darkened momentarily. Caution, not accusation. He settled into the chair opposite mine, placing the folder on the table between us. "We need to discuss arrangements." "Arrangements," I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. "For your prisoner and heir?" He leaned forward, eyes flashing. "Is that what you think? That you're my prisoner? Aren't I? The security guards, the monitored phones, the drivers who report my every move, what would you call it? Protection." The word held absolute conviction. "You have no idea how many enemies I have, Elena. How many would hurt you to get to me?" It was an old argument, one we'd had countless times before. "And the locked doors, the missing passport, the way your men follow me everywhere? That's all protection too?" A muscle twitched in his jaw. "You tried to leave in the middle of the night without a word. What did you expect?" "I expected freedom." The words burst from me with more force than I intended. "I expected the right to walk away from a life I never asked for, from truths you kept hidden until it was too late." His eyes narrowed. "You knew exactly who I was when you married me. I knew you were powerful. I knew you were wealthy. I didn't know you were—" I stopped, suddenly aware of potential listening ears. "Say it." His voice was dangerously soft. "What am I, Elena?" I met his gaze unflinchingly. "A criminal. A man who hurts people, who controls them, who thinks owning something is the same as earning its loyalty." Something flickered across his face. Pain, perhaps, if I believed him capable of it, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. He opened the folder, pulling out several documents. "These are my terms." Terms. Another bitter word. "You'll move back into the main house this weekend. Your old rooms are being prepared. You'll have full access to the estate again, with reasonable security measures." "And if I refuse?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's not an option. Not anymore." He slid a document toward me. "I've tripled your monthly allowance. You'll want for nothing. The baby will want for nothing." I didn't touch the paper. "I don't want your money. I want my freedom." "Your freedom," he repeated slowly, as if tasting the word. "To do what, exactly? To raise my child in some cramped apartment? To work 60 hours a week while strangers care for our baby? To live without protection in a world where my name alone makes you a target?" Put that way, it sounded foolish, naive, but it had never been about luxury. "To live without fear," I whispered. "To not flinch when doors slam. To not wonder if today is the day your business follows you home. To not watch you become more like your father every day." That hit its mark. Dominic went very still, his eyes darkening to obsidian. He despised any comparison to Antonio Russo. I am nothing like him, he said, each word precisely enunciated. Aren't you? The control, the rage just beneath the surface, the way everyone around you walks on eggshells. I leaned forward. Your father ruled by fear. What do you rule by? Respect, he snapped. Fear and respect aren't the same thing. He stood suddenly, pacing the small garden like a caged predator. You know nothing about my world, Elena. Nothing about what it takes to survive in it. Then why keep me in it? Why not let me go? He whirled to face me, and for a moment, I glimpsed the raw emotion he usually kept so carefully contained. Because you're mine. His voice was rough. Because I can't. He stopped, composing himself with visible effort. You're carrying my child, my heir, my legacy. That changes everything. The baby doesn't have to grow up in your world, I said quietly. We could arrange. No. The single syllable was final. No child of mine grows up without me. No child of mine grows up unprotected, unloved, without knowing exactly who they are and what that means. The passion in his voice startled me. This wasn't just about possession or control. This was something deeper, more primal. And what does being a Russo mean, Dominic? I asked. What legacy are you so desperate to pass on? He moved closer, crouching beside my chair so our faces were level. This close, I could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, a souvenir from his father's signet ring, though he never spoke of it. I could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw. Power, he said simply. Protection. Family above all else. Your father's creed, I noted. My father perverted it. His hand moved, hesitating just above my stomach before withdrawing. He thought power meant terror, protection meant isolation, family meant ownership. And you don't? His eyes met mine, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw the man I'd fallen for, the man who'd charmed me with his intensity, his focus, his absolute devotion. I thought I knew better, he said softly, until I started losing you. The words hung between us, startlingly vulnerable from a man who showed vulnerability to no one. You never had me, I whispered. Not really. You had a version of me. A caged bird singing pretty songs until she realized the cage door would never open. He stood again. His moment of openness sealed shut as quickly as it had appeared. We'll try again, he said, his voice back to its usual controlled tone. For the baby, you'll see that I can be different. Different how? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. You'll have more freedom within reason, more input in decisions, less... He searched for the word, surveillance. And your business? The parts of it I'm not supposed to know about? The blood on your hands? His expression hardened. Some things won't change, Elena, can't change. But they can be kept separate from our family life. From you and the baby. It was a concession, small as it was, more than he'd ever offered before. I need time, I said. Time to think. Time to... I gestured vaguely, encompassing the chaos of the day, the pregnancy, the future stretching before me like uncharted waters. He nodded once, decisive. 2 days. Then you move back to the main house. He picked up the folder, leaving one document on the table, the ultrasound. He said, his voice softer. The doctor left it for me. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Dominic. He paused. I'm not making any promises. About the future. About us. He looked back, his expression inscrutable. You don't have to, Elena. I'll make them for both of us. With that, he walked away, his silhouette dissolving into the gathering darkness, leaving me alone with the black and white image of our child, the invisible bond that would forever tie me to a man I both loved and feared, a world I'd tried desperately to escape, and a future I could no longer avoid. Morning sickness was a cruel misnomer. It struck at all hours, a constant reminder of the life growing inside me and the decisions looming ahead. I spent the night alternating between restless sleep and hunched over the bathroom toilet, my body rebelling against the stress and uncertainty as much as the pregnancy hormones. By dawn, I was exhausted but clear-headed. Dominic had given me 2 days to think. 2 days to decide how to navigate this new reality where complete escape was no longer an option. I showered, dressed in loose cotton pants and a flowing blouse, and wandered into the kitchen. Through the window, I spotted the dark silhouette of a security guard patrolling the perimeter. Some things never changed. The kitchen door opened, startling me. It was Rosa, carrying a basket of freshly baked bread and ginger cookies that filled the room with their spicy sweetness. "You need to eat," she said, setting down the basket and immediately filling the kettle for tea. It wasn't a question. "I'm not hungry," I replied, but sat at the kitchen island anyway, knowing resistance was futile when Rosa was in caretaking mode. "The baby is hungry," she countered, placing a plate before me. "Even if you don't know it." I nibbled a cookie, surprised when my stomach didn't immediately reject it. Rosa worked silently, preparing a proper breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast, moving around the kitchen with the familiarity of someone who had been feeding the Russo household for decades. "He came to see me last night," she said suddenly. "After he left you." I looked up, curious despite myself. "Dominic, what did he want?" "To know what you liked to eat when you first came to the house. What made you happy?" She set the plate of eggs before me. "He's trying, Elena." I stared at the food, a lump forming in my throat. It was such a small thing, remembering what foods had comforted me when I was a new bride, terrified and overwhelmed by the world I'd married into. Yet somehow, it pierced through my defenses. "Trying isn't enough," I said quietly. "Not after everything." Rosa sighed, her weathered hands smoothing her apron. "When I first came to work for the Russos, Antonio, Dominic's father, was still alive. That man." She crossed herself again, a gesture I'd noticed she made whenever Antonio was mentioned. "He was evil, in a way his son has never been." "Dominic has blood on his hands too," I reminded her. "Yes." She didn't deny it, but never without reason, never for pleasure. The distinction felt academic to me. Dead was dead. Yet I couldn't deny that Dominic operated by a code, twisted as it might be, while the stories of his father suggested a man who enjoyed cruelty for its own sake. "What happened to Dominic's mother?" I asked. It was a question I'd raised before, but one Dominic had always deflected. Rosa's expression darkened. "Maria tried to leave, just like you." "She packed young Dominic's things in the middle of the night when he was 7. Antonio caught them at the gate." She turned away, busying herself with wiping down the already clean counter. 3 days later, they found her car in the river. Antonio told everyone it was an accident. Told Dominic it was his fault for trying to leave. My blood ran cold. "Are you saying Antonio killed her?" Rosa's silence was answer enough. "And Dominic believes it was his fault? That trying to escape caused her death?" She nodded slowly. "He never speaks of it, but some wounds don't need words to fester." Her dark eyes held mine. "Perhaps now you understand why the thought of you leaving, especially with his child, touches something broken in him." I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. "That explains his trauma. It doesn't excuse it." "No," she agreed. "But understanding is still a weapon, Mija, the strongest one you have." After Rosa left, I spent the morning pacing the guest house, mind racing. I needed air, space to think beyond these walls. On impulse, I called Marco. "I want to go out," I said when he answered. "Just for a few hours." There was a pause. "Let me check with Mr. Russo." "No," I interrupted. "He promised me more freedom. This is my test of that promise." Another pause, longer this time. "Where do you want to go?" "The Botanical Gardens. A public place. Beautiful. Peaceful. Somewhere I could think." 30 minutes later, I was in the back of a sleek black sedan, Marco driving, another security detail following discreetly in a second car. Not exactly freedom, but a step toward it. The gardens were a riot of late summer blooms, paths winding through carefully cultivated wilderness. I walked slowly, one hand resting occasionally on my still flat stomach, the other trailing along leaves and flower petals. "I don't know what to do," I whispered to the tiny life inside me. "I don't know how to keep us both safe and free." Freedom. Such a simple word for such a complex concept. What did freedom really mean when you were carrying a child? Even without Dominic in the equation, There would be responsibilities, limitations, compromises. No parent was truly free. But there was a difference between the natural limitations of parenthood and the gilded cage Dominic had built around me. I found a bench in a secluded corner of the rose garden and sat, closing my eyes against the dappled sunlight filtering through overhead branches. Marco kept a respectful distance, his presence both reassuring and constraining. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Dominic. "Are the gardens to your liking?" Of course he knew exactly where I was. I considered not responding, but pettiness wouldn't serve me now. "Yes," I typed back. "Thank you for allowing this." His response came immediately. "It's not about allowing, it's about protection." I put the phone away without replying, unwilling to restart an argument via text. Instead, I watched an elderly couple strolling arm in arm along the path, their movements synchronized by decades together. Would Dominic and I ever reach that stage? Comfortable silence, gentle touches, the hard edges of youth softened by time and compromise. It seemed impossible. Yet once, I had loved him fiercely. Once, I had seen beneath the controlled exterior to the wounded man beneath. That was before I understood the full extent of his business, before I witnessed the casual violence, before I became another possession to be guarded rather than a partner to be cherished. Could we find our way back to something resembling love? For our child's sake, if nothing else. The afternoon stretched on, the gardens gradually emptying as closing time approached. I stood reluctantly, knowing I couldn't delay the return to the estate forever. Marco appeared at my side instantly. "Ready, Mrs. Russo?" The name still fit uncomfortably, like clothing I'd outgrown. But perhaps I needed to reclaim it, reshape it into something I could bear to wear. As we walked toward the exit, a sharp crack echoed through the gardens. Marco reacted instantly, shoving me to the ground and covering my body with his. Pain shot through my shoulder as it hit the path. "Stay down!" he growled, one hand already drawing his concealed weapon. Panic gripped me. "What was that? What's happening?" "Probably nothing," he said, but his tense posture belied his words. "Car backfiring, but we take no chances." The second security detail appeared, moving with practiced efficiency. Before I could process what was happening, I was being bundled into the car, Marco scanning the surroundings with predatory focus as he slid into the driver's seat. "Are you hurt?" he asked as we pulled away, faster than was strictly necessary. I touched my shoulder, wincing. "Just bruised from the fall." He nodded, eyes constantly checking the mirrors. "We'll have the doctor look at it when we get back. Just to be safe." "It was just a car, wasn't it?" I asked, the fear in my voice embarrassing me. Not someone after us?" Marco's hesitation told me everything. "Probably," he finally said. "But in our world, Mrs. Russo, paranoia keeps people alive. Our world. As if I'd ever chosen to be part of it." When we reached the estate, Dominic was waiting at the entrance, his casual stance betrayed by the tension visible in every line of his body. As soon as the car stopped, he yanked open my door. "Are you all right?" His eyes raked over me, checking for injuries. "I'm fine," I said, allowing him to help me out of the car. "It was nothing. A car backfiring." "We don't know that," Marco interjected, earning a sharp look from his boss. Dominic's arm slid around my waist, both protective and possessive as he led me inside. "You're bleeding." I looked down in surprise. There was indeed a small scrape on my elbow, probably from when Marco pushed me down. "It's nothing. Just a scratch." He ignored this, guiding me to the main house rather than the guest house. I was too rattled to protest. The main house, the house that had been our home for 5 years, was exactly as I'd left it 2 months ago when I moved to the guest house. Same artwork on the walls, same furniture, same scent of lemon polish and the roses Dominic insisted be fresh cut daily. Yet it felt different now, or perhaps I was the one who had changed. He led me to the kitchen, sitting me at the island while he retrieved the first aid kit from a drawer. The domesticity of the moment was jarring. Dominic Russo, feared crime boss, carefully cleaning a minor scrape on his estranged wife's elbow. It was just a car, I repeated, needing to believe it. His hands stilled. Maybe. Maybe not. He looked up, dark eyes intense. This is why I can't let you go, Elena. This is the world we live in, one where a trip to the gardens could end with a bullet. Most people don't live in that world, I countered. We do. He finished bandaging my elbow. I do. And by extension, so do you and our child. It doesn't have to be this way. He laughed, a sound without humor. You think I can just walk away? That I can erase 20 years of history, of connections, of enemies? He shook his head. There's no retirement plan in my business, Elena. No clean slate. The finality in his voice chilled me. It was true. I'd been naive to think otherwise. Even if Dominic wanted to leave his empire behind, too many people would ensure that didn't happen. Either his own organization, who would see it as weakness, or his rivals, who would see it as opportunity. We were interrupted by the arrival of the doctor, the same woman who had examined me the day before. She checked my shoulder and elbow, pronounced both minor injuries, but insisted on another ultrasound, just to be certain. The baby hadn't been affected by the stress or the fall. Dominic stayed for the examination, his eyes fixed on the screen where our child's heartbeat pulsed, strong and rapid. The naked emotion on his face in that moment was startling, raw, unguarded wonder. I had seen that expression only once before, on our wedding day, when he had looked at me as if I were a miracle he couldn't believe was his. Everything looks perfect, the doctor assured us, wiping the gel from my stomach, but I'd recommend rest for the remainder of today. No more excitement. Dominic nodded, thanked her, and showed her out with the smooth courtesy he could turn on and off like a switch. When he returned, he found me still sitting on the examination table, suddenly exhausted by the emotional whiplash of the day. You'll stay in the main house tonight, he said. It wasn't a question. For once, I didn't argue. The security of the main house, with its advanced systems and extra personnel, seemed appealing after the scare at the gardens. One night, I could give him that much. He must have read the surrender in my face because he nodded once, satisfied. I'll have Rosa prepare dinner. Your favorite. As he turned to leave, I called after him, echoing his words from the day before. Dominic. He paused. This changes nothing. About us. About the future. His smile was slow, confident, the smile of a man accustomed to getting his way. We'll see, Elena. We'll see. I awoke in our old bedroom, momentarily disoriented by the familiar ceiling above me, silk sheets instead of the cotton ones I'd chosen for the guest house. The subtle scent of Dominic's cologne lingering in the air despite his absence. He'd kept his word about giving me space. Sleeping elsewhere in the massive house, for just a moment, I could pretend the last year hadn't happened. That I hadn't discovered the true extent of Dominic's business empire, that I hadn't tried to leave, that the divorce papers had never been drawn up. But reality rushed back as my hand instinctively moved to my stomach. The baby. The reason I was here again, trapped in this beautiful prison with its marble floors and priceless art, and silent, watchful guards. I showered in the enormous master bathroom, its luxury no longer impressive, but simply part of the gilded cage. When I emerged, wrapped in a plush robe, I found clothes laid out on the bed, my clothes, brought from the guest house. Including, I noted with a mixture of irritation and grudging appreciation, my most comfortable loungewear. Downstairs, I found Dominic in his study, the door uncharacteristically open. He was on the phone, speaking rapid-fire Italian, his voice sharp with authority. He spotted me hovering in the doorway and gestured for me to come in, not breaking his conversation. I hesitated before entering. The study had always been his sanctum, the epicenter of his empire, a place I'd been welcome during our early days together, but had gradually become off-limits as the distance between us grew. It was exactly as I remembered, dark wood paneling, leather-bound books lining built-in shelves, his massive desk positioned to view both the door and the windows overlooking the grounds. A place designed for control. He ended his call abruptly when I stepped inside. You slept well? The question seemed oddly tentative coming from him. Yes. It wasn't entirely a lie. Despite everything, I'd slept more soundly in this room than I had in weeks at the guest house. Perhaps my body remembered the safety it had once felt here, before knowledge had poisoned everything. Good. He stood, circling the desk to approach me, stopping a careful distance away. The doctor recommended rest, but I thought you might enjoy breakfast on the terrace. The weather is mild today, I nodded, surprised by the consideration. That would be nice. He escorted me through the house, his hand hovering near the small of my back, but never quite touching. The terrace overlooked the rose gardens, my gardens, planted at my request during our first year of marriage, a token of love from a man who expressed his feelings through gestures rather than words. Breakfast was already waiting. Fresh fruit, pastries. The special herbal tea Rosa knew settled my stomach. Dominic pulled out my chair, waited until I was seated, then took his place across from me. Your bruise looks better, he observed, nodding toward my elbow. I glanced down, having almost forgotten the minor injury. It wasn't serious. He poured coffee for himself, movements precise and controlled. Marco's investigating yesterday's incident. It was a car backfiring, I insisted, though with less conviction than before. Dominic's expression remained neutral. Perhaps. But my enemies know my routines. They know my weaknesses. I'm not your weakness, I said automatically. His eyes met mine, dark and intense. You are my greatest weakness, Elena. You always have been. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Before I could formulate a response, he continued. That's why I kept you so close, why I needed to know where you were, who you were with, not because I didn't trust you, but because I couldn't bear the thought of you being used against me, so I was kept in a cage for my own protection. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Yes. No apology, no softening of the truth. But I see now that the cage itself was driving you away. I stared at him, surprised by this admission. What are you saying? He set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. I'm saying I made mistakes, that in trying to keep you safe, I made you feel imprisoned. It was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from him. Part of me wanted to cling to my anger, to the justified resentment that had fueled my escape attempts. But another part, the part that had fallen in love with him years ago, recognized the significance of this concession. What happens now? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Now we find a middle ground. He leaned forward. You want freedom. I need to know you and the baby are safe. There must be a compromise that satisfies both. I picked at a pastry, buying time to organize my thoughts. What kind of compromise? You stay here where security is strongest, but you come and go as you please, with Marco or another guard of your choosing. No more reporting your every movement to me. It was less than I wanted, but more than I'd expected. And your business? His expression hardened slightly. Remain separate from our home life, as I promised. That's not enough, Dominic. Not anymore. I met his gaze steadily. I need to know what I'm bringing our child into. No more secrets. No more locked rooms I'm not allowed to enter. He was silent for so long I thought he would refuse. Finally, he nodded once, a short, sharp movement. Ask your questions. I will answer what I can. How much of your business is legitimate? A mirthless smile. 60%. The restaurants, the import business, the real estate, all clean, all profitable. The rest. He shrugged. Less so. The violence, the threats, the men who disappear after crossing you. Is that all necessary? He didn't flinch from the accusation. In my world? Yes. Weakness invites predators. Mercy is seen as vulnerability. My father understood this, if little else. And our child? Will they be expected to take over this empire of fear one day? His eyes flashed. Our child will have choices I never had. If they want the legitimate businesses, they can have them. If they want nothing to do with any of it, I will ensure they have the freedom to walk away. Like I had the freedom to walk away? I couldn't help the barb. His jaw tightened. That's different. Why? Because I'm your possession and they'll be your blood? Because I'm in love with you, he snapped, the words exploding from him with uncharacteristic rawness. Because the thought of you leaving tears, something open inside me that I can't control. Because I know I should let you go, but I can't. The confession hung in the air between us, shocking in its vulnerability. Dominic Russo didn't admit weakness, didn't expose his inner thoughts, didn't lose control of his carefully measured words. I stared at him, seeing past the powerful exterior to the damaged man beneath, the boy who had lost his mother, who had been raised by a monster, who had built walls so thick around himself that even I had rarely glimpsed behind them. "I loved you once," I said quietly, "before I knew what your business really entailed, before I became another possession to be guarded." Pain flickered across his features, quickly masked. And now? It was a question I'd asked myself 1,000 times over the past year. Did I still love him? Could you love someone you feared? Someone whose world represented everything you wanted to escape? "I don't know," I admitted. "There are moments when I see the man I married, and then there are moments when you become someone I don't recognize." He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of mine. "An invitation, not a demand. Let me show you the man you married again. Let me prove that I can change." I hesitated before placing my hand in his skin warm against my palm. "Words are easy, Dominic. Actions are what matter. Then judge me by my actions." His thumb traced circles on my wrist, the gesture achingly familiar. "Starting today." The moment was interrupted by Marco appearing at the terrace entrance. "Sorry to disturb you, boss." His eyes flicked meaningfully toward me. "There's a situation that requires your attention." Dominic's expression closed immediately, the vulnerable man vanishing behind the mask of the crime boss. He stood, straightening his already impeccable shirt. "I'll be back for dinner. Rest today, as the doctor ordered." He hesitated, then bent to press a kiss to my forehead, a gesture so reminiscent of our early days together that my heart contracted painfully. After he left, I wandered the grounds, shadowed by a female security guard whose presence was less intrusive than the usual men. The gardens were in full bloom, a riot of late summer color that had once brought me joy. I tried to recapture that feeling, to imagine raising a child here among the roses and fountains, teaching them to appreciate beauty while sheltering them from the darkness of their father's world. Could it work? Could Dominic truly separate his criminal enterprises from his family life? Could I learn to live with the compromise, to accept the parts of him I could not change while nurturing the good I still believed existed? By evening, I had no answers, only more questions. I dressed for dinner with care, choosing a simple blue dress that complemented my eyes, Dominic's favorite. Not a surrender, I told myself. A strategic choice. A reminder of what we had once shared. I found him waiting in the formal dining room, the table set for two with candles and fresh flowers. He stood when I entered, his eyes traveling over me with appreciation that was both familiar and unsettling. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." I took my seat, allowing him to push in my chair. "Did you resolve your situation?" Something dark flickered across his features. "Yes." I didn't press for details, not yet ready to confront the reality of his other life. Instead, we ate in relative silence, the tension between us charged with unspoken words and complicated history. "I've been thinking about names," I said finally, surprising myself as much as him. "For the baby." His fork paused halfway to his mouth. "You have?" I nodded, unable to explain the sudden urge to share this with him. "Sophia, for a girl, after my grandmother. Sophia Russo." He tested the name, a small smile softening his features. "It's beautiful, strong, and for a boy?" I hesitated. "I thought perhaps Antonio, after your father." The suggestion was a test, a probe to see how he would respond. His face hardened, a muscle jumping in his jaw. "No. No. No child of mine will carry that name. Ever." The vehemence in his voice confirmed what Rosa had told me about his relationship with his father. What about Marco? After someone who has protected you, who has shown loyalty without cruelty. Surprise registered in his eyes, followed by thoughtful consideration. "Marco Russo." He nodded slowly. "A good name. A name without shadows." "A name without shadows," I repeated. "That's what I want for our child, Dominic. A life without shadows." He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "I want that too. More than you know." For just a moment, I allowed myself to believe him, to imagine a future where Dominic Russo could be both the powerful man his world required and the loving father our child deserved, where I could be both protected and free. where the shadows of his past and present didn't darken our tomorrow. It was a beautiful fantasy, but as his phone buzzed with yet another urgent message, as his expression shifted from tender husband to calculating crime boss in the space of a heartbeat, I wondered if it could ever be more than that. Fantasy or possibility? Naive dream or potential reality? The question hung unanswered as I watched him walk away, once again pulled into the darkness while I remained in the light, the distance between our worlds seeming both smaller and more insurmountable than ever before. 3 months passed in a delicate dance of compromise and caution. My stomach grew rounder, the baby's movements becoming stronger each day. Dominic kept his promises. No more surveillance reports, no more locked doors, no more suffocating protection. Instead, security remained at a respectful distance, and I came and went as I pleased, always with Marco, or another guard of my choosing. The guest house remained empty, a silent reminder of the freedom I'd sought and the compromise I'd accepted. I slept in our bedroom in the main house, though Dominic continued to occupy one of the guest suites, honoring my request for space. It was an uneasy truce, fraught with moments of tension and unexpected tenderness. Dominic attended every doctor's appointment, his face transforming with wonder each time we heard the baby's heartbeat. He ordered the nursery prepared, consulting me on every detail from paint colors to furniture. He left business calls when I entered the room, a physical demonstration of his promise to separate his two worlds. Small changes, perhaps, but significant from a man who had never before compromised on anything. Today was the 6-month scan, the appointment where we would learn the baby's sex. Dominic paced the doctor's waiting room while I sat calmly, one hand resting on my prominent belly. "You're making me dizzy," I said finally, patting the chair beside me. "Sit down." He complied, though his leg continued to bounce with nervous energy. "What if something's wrong?" he asked, voice low enough that only I could hear. "Nothing's wrong," I assured him. "Every checkup has been perfect." He nodded, but the worry didn't leave his eyes. My mother had complications, with me. It was the first time he'd voluntarily mentioned his mother, a gift of trust I hadn't expected. "Medical care has advanced since then," I said gently, "and I'm healthy. The baby is healthy." Before he could respond, the nurse called my name. Dominic helped me up, his hand at the small of my back as we followed her to the examination room. The ultrasound technician was cheerful and efficient, spreading the cold gel on my exposed belly, ready to find out if you're having a boy or a girl. I glanced at Dominic, whose attention was fixed on the screen. "Yes," I answered for both of us. "We're ready." The image on the screen shifted as the technician moved the wand, the black and white shadows gradually resolving into recognizable shapes. A spine, a head, tiny hands and feet. "There's your baby," she said, pointing out features. "Nice, strong heartbeat, good size for 24 weeks. And," she moved the wand slightly, "congratulations, it's a girl." A girl. Sophia. I felt tears spring to my eyes, unexpected emotion overwhelming me. When I looked at Dominic, I was shocked to see wetness on his cheeks as well. The first time I had ever seen him cry. "A daughter," he whispered, reaching for my hand and squeezing it tight. "Our daughter." The technician printed images for us, discreetly turning away to give us a moment of privacy. Dominic leaned down, pressing his forehead to mine. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice rough with emotion, "for giving me this, for staying." The drive home was quiet, both of us lost in thoughts of the future. A future that now had a face, a gender, a name. Sophia Russo, a little girl who would be born into wealth and privilege, but also into a legacy of shadows. As we turned through the estate gates, Dominic broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what you said, about a life without shadows for our daughter." "And?" He parked in front of the house, turning to face me. "I've started the process of divesting from certain aspects of my business." I stared at him, hardly daring to believe what I was hearing. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means I'm separating completely from the illegal operations, turning control over to trusted lieutenants while maintaining ownership of the legitimate businesses only." "Is that even possible?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. You said yourself there's no retirement plan in your world. His expression was grimly determined. It's complicated, dangerous even, but not impossible. He took my hand. It will take time, maybe years to fully extract myself. But I've started the process. Why? I needed to hear him say it. Why now? Because I saw her face today. His eyes met mine, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen them. Because I don't want my daughter looking at me the way I looked at my father. Because I want her to be proud of her name, not burdened by it. The words hung between us, a promise more binding than any wedding vow. And if it doesn't work? I asked softly. If your enemies won't let you walk away? A shadow crossed his face. Then we have contingencies, new identities, a new country, if necessary. It was more than I'd ever expected from him. This willingness to consider abandoning the empire he'd built, the power he'd accumulated. You'd leave everything behind? For us? In a heartbeat, he said without hesitation. The money, the power, the respect, none of it matters if I lose you. If I lose her. I placed a hand on my stomach, feeling Sophia kick as if in response to her father's words. I need you to know something, he continued, his voice low and intense. When you tried to leave before, when I stopped you, it wasn't about control. It was about terror. Terror? I echoed. The same terror I felt when my mother tried to take me away. The certainty that it would end in tragedy. He swallowed hard. I thought I was protecting you. I convinced myself it was for your own good. But the truth is, I was protecting myself from the pain of losing you. It was the most honest he'd ever been with me. The most vulnerable. The closest to an apology I would ever get from a man who had been raised to see apology as weakness. I can't promise I'll stay, I said finally. Not until I see real change. Not until I'm sure our daughter will be safe from your world. I understand. He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. I don't ask for promises, only for a chance to prove myself, to earn back your trust. As we entered the house, Marco met us in the foyer, his expression grave. Boss, there's a situation that needs your immediate attention. The familiar words, the familiar interruption. For a moment, I saw Dominic's expression harden into the mask I knew so well. Then, surprisingly, he shook his head. Not today, Marco. Whatever it is, Salvatore can handle it. He turned to me. Today is for family. Marco's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded and withdrew. Dominic placed a hand on the small of my back, guiding me toward the stairs. I have something to show you. He led me to the nursery, a room I hadn't visited since we'd discussed basic design plans weeks ago. When he opened the door, I gasped. The room had been transformed. Soft lavender walls, a hand-carved wooden crib, gauzy curtains that filtered the afternoon sunlight into a gentle glow. A rocking chair by the window, overlooking the gardens. Shelves filled with books and stuffed animals. Do you like it? He asked, a note of uncertainty in his voice that I'd rarely heard before. I walked into the center of the room, touching the mobile of delicate paper birds hanging above the crib. You did all this? I had help with the construction and painting, he admitted. But the design, the choices, those were mine, based on things you'd mentioned wanting. I turned to him, tears welling in my eyes for the second time that day. It's perfect. He approached slowly, giving me time to step away if I wished. When I didn't, he placed his hands gently on my shoulders. I meant what I said, Elena. I'm changing. For you. For Sophia. For the man I want to be, not the man my father tried to make me. I searched his face, looking for any sign of manipulation or deceit. I found only raw sincerity and the vulnerability he showed to no one else. I believe you want to change, I said carefully. I'm not sure yet if you can. Then let me prove it. Day by day. His hand moved to cup my cheek. Stay. Give me the chance to be the husband you deserve. The father Sophia needs. I placed my hand over his. I'm not making any promises beyond today. Today is enough, he said simply. Tomorrow we can decide again. That night, for the first time in months, I asked him to stay in our bedroom. Not for intimacy, I wasn't ready for that yet, but for connection, for the possibility of rebuilding what had been broken. We lay side by side, my head on his chest, his hand resting protectively over my rounded stomach. Sophia kicked against his palm, and I felt his sharp intake of breath. "She knows her father," I murmured. "Her father who will never let her down," he vowed, the words vibrating through his chest beneath my ear. "Who will never make her afraid, who will protect her without controlling her." I tilted my head to look at him. "And her mother?" His eyes met mine, dark and serious. "Her mother who will always be free to choose. Every day. Every moment. Even if I choose to leave?" I needed to hear him say it. Pain flashed across his features, but he nodded. "Even then. Though I will spend every day making sure you have reasons to stay." 6 months later, Sophia Maria Russo was born on a snowy February morning, her cries strong and indignant, her tiny fists clenched as if ready to fight the world. Dominic wept openly as he held her, this hardened man transformed by the miracle of 7 pounds of new life. By then, the changes he'd promised were well underway. The shadowy parts of his business gradually transferred to trusted lieutenants. Our security detail reduced by half. The main house sold, replaced by a smaller, less ostentatious home outside the city, close enough to maintain his legitimate business interests, but far from the neighborhoods associated with his former activities. There were setbacks, threats from rivals who sensed weakness, betrayals from those who felt abandoned, moments when Dominic struggled against ingrained instincts of control and domination. There were nights when I still woke in cold sweats, uncertain if I'd made the right choice, if I could trust the transformation I was witnessing. But there were also triumphs. The day Dominic walked away from a provocation that would once have ended in blood. The evening he returned home at a reasonable hour, choosing family dinner over a business emergency. The morning I found him in the nursery, singing softly to our daughter in Italian, the tenderness in his expression unlike anything I'd ever seen. "Happy?" he asked one evening, a year after Sophia's birth, as we sat on the porch of our new home, watching the sunset while our daughter slept peacefully inside. "Getting there," I answered honestly. "You?" He considered the question, his face more relaxed than I'd ever seen it. The constant vigilance, the perpetual calculation that had once defined him, gradually fading with each month of legitimate business, each day of normal family life. "I never knew happiness was possible," he finally said. "Not for someone like me, not after everything." I reached for his hand, our fingers intertwining. "And now?" He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my palm. "Now I fight for it every day. Like I once fought for power, for respect. But this," he gestured toward our home, our sleeping daughter, our joined hands. "This is worth fighting for." I leaned into him, allowing myself to fully inhabit the moment. The divorce papers were long destroyed, the past not forgotten but gradually healing. The future still uncertain. His complete extraction from his former world would take years, perhaps a lifetime, but no longer shrouded in shadows. "One day at a time," I whispered, echoing the promise we'd made in the nursery a year before. He nodded, arms tightening around me. One day at a time, and for that day, at least, it was enough. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own choices. But today, in this moment, we were simply a family. A man overcoming his past. A woman who had found freedom in staying rather than leaving. A child who would grow up knowing both protection and independence. Not a fairy tale ending. Those didn't exist in the real world. But a beginning. A chance. A choice we would make again with each new dawn. "I love you," he said. The words once rare, now spoken freely. "Both of you." "We love you too," I replied, no longer afraid to admit the truth I had fought against for so long, shadows and all. His smile, genuine, unguarded, was answer enough. Whatever came tomorrow, today we had found our way back to each other. Not as captor and captive, but as partners in a life we were building together. One choice, one day, one compromise at a time.